And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Z Movie Podcast. I am Yoko, and this is Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael, and today we're going to do commentary track for Shin Godzilla, which is I think the most recent Japanese Toho released Godzilla film. And Yoko, you actually worked on this film, was it 5 or 6 years back or something like that?
Yes, it was actually 2015, so it's now been 6 years. God, time really does fly by. I was 20 at the time, so that was kind of a deal breaker. But the movie came out in 2016, and so exactly a month ago today is the 5th anniversary of the film. So for the 5th anniversary, I wanted to do this special episode with you, Michael, to talk about the film. And also for this podcast, we have been talking about doing commentary tracks for other films. So this, I think, is a pretty good film to kickstart that segment of our podcast. If you guys have any requests, we'll get into them at some point down the road. But we're starting off with this film. So I guess a quick introduction for Shin Godzilla. This is a film that was directed by Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi, the duo that created Evangelion. So our last episode was on Eva, so we're kind of doing a Anno Higuchi month, I guess, of just their products. And it was incredibly successful in Japan at the time. It swooped the Japanese Academy Awards. It won Best Picture of that year, so that was incredibly gratifying. And it took the series back to basics again. It's another film where it's only Godzilla fighting the military, and that's it. There's no versus monsters or anything like that. It is just simply Godzilla. So it took the core idea of the 1954 film and brought it to modern times. And I remember, Michael, back in October of 2016, you, me, and our crew saw it all together
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
AMC Theater. So that was really delightful to see it with a New York audience back at home.
Yeah, we went to see it in the theater, and I think that came out like a year or so after the Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie. It was like 2014 or whatever.
Yeah, so it came out 2 years after.
Right. So it was interesting to see sort of the comparison between the Americanized version of Godzilla, the most recent at that point iteration of the Americanized Godzilla, and the Japanese Godzilla. So just comparing those two is kind of interesting because they're very different feels. It was very odd. I hadn't seen, like, since the original kind of like old school Godzilla movies, I haven't really seen a bunch of Godzilla movies. So it was definitely different, I have to say, from like what I expect from like an American monster movie.
Right.
But I'm curious to see what my opinion will be the second time around.
And curiously now, Michael, you've seen Evangelion now, so
Oh yeah.
this might all actually come back in hindsight.
Well, unless Godzilla like flips up into the sky and like becomes like, to a man and a woman like like entwined at the hip, and they're like yogurt colored, I think probably I'm probably not going to be that.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see what connections they draw, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, I guess we'll start watching the film. For any of you guys at home listening to this, we are using the Toho version of it, so there's no Funimation logo in the beginning, so if you just want to skip that real quick, we're starting just before the first Toho logo that pops up.
Oh, and where can people watch this? Is it on any streaming platforms? Do they have to get it on iTunes? Like, where do people go if they want to watch along?
Unfortunately, it is not available on a streaming site. However, you can purchase it on Amazon Prime or iTunes, and Funimation also is selling the Blu-ray. So if you like the physical copy, Funimation has you covered, but if you want the digital copy, iTunes has the subbed version, Amazon Prime also has the subbed version, so definitely find it on those sites. If you want to follow along, if you have your DVD copy or your digital copy good and ready, you can follow along with our commentary. So, without further ado, let's get the film rolling. So, Michael, do you want to give us a countdown?
Sure. 3, 2, 1, go.
Jesus Christ.
Bam.
No. I'll hit play once you say play. Give me a countdown, motherfucker.
Oh, 3, 2, 1, play.
Okay, so here's the first Toho
logo. You better leave
logo.
all that awkwardness in.
Yes.
That's what I live for. All right, here we go. Toho logo.
Yeah, this is the first Toho logo, and for some reason there are two logos. Interestingly, it's the modern one, and this is the classic one right here. And of course, the iconic footsteps from the original version, and also the iconic roar, which is coming up in a little bit. This is all a loving tribute to the original 54 film. If you've seen that first original 54 film, you can really tell that this is as close of a representation of a modern-day version of that film, and the ocean coming up here, this is meant to evoke that first shot from that original film.
Uh-oh, it's Tokyo Bay.
Yes, always something's happening in Tokyo Bay. It's never a peaceful day in Tokyo, is it?
No, no. Well, in real life, I
In real life,
probably
yes,
usually.
but in fiction, there's always monsters coming up and, and
Glory
everything.
Maru.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Glory Maru. So it's really interesting off the bat in this scene in particular that in a little bit you can see that the shoes are placed together, which in Japanese culture you'll understand that it usually indicates someone who has committed suicide. And that's something that most Western audiences probably won't pick up on the first time. So that is a very tiny detail that might only be targeted for the Japanese audience, and it might be lost upon American audiences.
Yeah, that is not as clear to me. Oops, explodey.
Ooh, explosions! That's the Aqua Tunnel. I just it just begins with this, like,
Yeah, what is this, blood?
yeah. It's very
Now,
Evangelion, isn't it?
I just want to say, I don't like them showing off their infrastructure. I'm kind of getting tired of it. He's like, oh, here's our aqueduct, here's our tunnel, here's our, train line. I'm like, listen, we here in the States are sitting at like a D for infrastructure. I
Oh
don't
my
like you
god.
flexing.
How dare they flaunt their great infrastructure? Here come the
I
Ano
mean, it is pretty
shots.
insensitive.
Oh yeah, a word.
Oh, damn. Does it mean to say the guy in the red tie, the guy in the black tie behind him looks a little bit like Ben Shapiro?
Oh my god. No, he
Does that mean?
doesn't. No, he
He does a little
doesn't.
bit. He's got the haircut.
Oh my god. That's a great shot. In this movie in particular, there are like so many of these really incredible and inventive shots and frames that I really admire about this movie, and I keep coming back to it to analyze all the cinematography here. And this set actually was built within Toho Studios, I remember.
Oh, have you been on this set?
I have been on this set before. I do remember that at the end of the shoot days, they had to put this plastic tarp over the entire set so that it would stay clean and there wouldn't be any dust on the tables and the microphones and such. So it was all very
Huh.
meticulously planned out.
Super Puma helicopter. God, military names are so overcompensating.
Yeah, I know. They're always like, it's the Black Hawk Eagle.
The
Nudge.
the strength tiger chopper, you know. It's like, come on,
All
guys.
these names are probably made up by some nerd, I guess, who's trying to like really overcompensate. It's just really funny to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, or sell it, you know.
Or sell it.
Okay. People with their cell phones. Okay.
Yes.
Uh oh. Some. Okay.
Yeah, all this is shot on iPhone, and you can very much tell that it was shot on iPhone.
Let's get a little bit of a Cloverfieldy thing going on here.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a Cloverfield vibe to it. But Ano's goal with Shin Godzilla was to evoke and create that response that you get from seeing a real life disaster in real life. And I remember the staff just pouring through all of these videos and clips from the Fukushima disaster and just watching clips and clips and clips and trying to replicate the feel of those newsreel clips into this film. So um, that documentary style is very prevalent.
I guess it should be said that this film, in terms of like crisis management, does take a lot of cues from the nuclear reactor meltdown.
Yes, this whole movie is pretty much a large critique on the Japanese government's response to the Fukushima disaster. And actually, I am curious, Michael, because some of the heavyweights in the Godzilla fan community have claimed that Shin Godzilla is quote unquote right wing and nationalistic, which I very much disagree with. But seeing the film once before, I am curious to hear what you thought of that notion.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear like what your thoughts were on that.
I will have to give you a verdict at the end. It is kind of. I don't want to be too. I don't want to speak here as an ignorant Westerner, but I understand that politically Japan is typically to the right of
Yes.
America on average. Maybe our far right is farther than their far right or whatever, but I
Yes.
think on average, the Japanese discourse or politics, whatever, are far more far right. So I'll try to see if I feel like it's far right, but I probably will think it's going to be more right than I guess what I'm used to anyway.
Right.
So I'll have to try to figure that out.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. I think that Japan, politically at least, has been very right leaning as of late, especially in the modern times. And I do think that critique on this film being nationalistic or right wing is incredibly misinterpreted, especially if you know who created the film. Obviously, Anno has been very, very critical of the Japanese government and of Japanese society, and you can see a lot of his critiques on those in Evangelion. There are a lot of things he wants to say about Japan through that show.
Well, Evangelion, I think it's way clearer, and it's almost easier to pick that stuff out in the animation.
Right, right. It's actually very interesting how Anno, as a writer, crafted a story in this particular Godzilla film where it's not about characters per se, it's more about the moment and the situation and the crisis at hand. I think a lot of Western critics did point to that as a weak point, that the characters quote unquote lack depth. However, because it is a monster film and because of the fact that it is mostly about political talking heads trying to solve this crisis, I found it very refreshing that the movie is focused more on the time sensitive nature of the story as opposed to doing a character analysis. And it's not like Anno can't do that. Clearly, Evangelion is all of that. But it is very interesting to see this particular take on Godzilla and storytelling in general. I don't know, Michael, if you feel that way
I mean, I
or.
think a lot of movies are based around the idea of character development, but you don't necessarily have to do any. I think of two different movies, kind of just looking at this now. Well, actually, one movie and one mini series. The movie would be Doctor Strangelove.
Mhm,
Like, I wouldn't say there's a great deal of character development necessarily in Doctor Strangelove.
right.
It is more kind of like trying to pin down a moment in the Cold War extreme tensions
Right.
between East and West, and sort of the absurdity of the military and government organizations on both sides.
Mhm.
More the American, and so that's one where I don't think. I mean, that kind of backs up the idea of you don't really need character development necessarily. And the other thing that this makes me think of, that Shin Godzilla makes me think of, is the Chernobyl
I knew you
miniseries.
were going to
Which,
say that, yep.
well, listen. I mean, they're kind of covering. I mean, one of them is an allegory for mishandling of a nuclear crisis, and the other one is literally that. And
Yes.
that does, in the case of Jared Harris's character,
Mhm.
who I can't remember his name, but I can remember Comrade Dyatlov,
Yellow's
um,
right? That's so strange.
the Sigma male Chad,
Yeah.
Comrade Dyatlov. Oh no, God, what is it? Oh
What is
God,
his
what's his
name? I
name?
forget. Oh, here's the
It's
tale.
oh.
Oh, Michael, do you see the thing where okay, so while you were watching Evangelion, you were messaging me and you were saying that Ano likes to juxtapose his cuts where a character will say a line of dialogue and then it would contradict or answer what the character was saying in the previous cut, almost like it's an episode of Always Sunny.
Yeah, that was a big thing in some of the episodes of the show, not so much in the
Yeah,
movies.
and this happens a few times in this film where, they're like, oh, there's no way this creature could exist. Boom, the tail shows up. Oh, there's no way this creature can make landfall. Boom, it makes landfall. So I think he really likes to do that
I see.
in his movies. It's a very fun trope, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, that is kind of a calling card for him, it seems like.
Yes. He just loves to juxtapose his cuts and to make them as engaging and as unique as possible, and that's really interesting to see. And here, I just love the fact that they have to go to another conference room to have another discussion. Like that's just hilarious.
Yeah, that is very governmenty.
Yeah, but also in particular very Japanese. I do remember that when we were watching the film in theaters when it came out, I took my entire family to go see it. And after the movie ended, my cousin turned to me and he said, "Yoko, if anyone wants to know what Japan is really like, have them watch this movie." And I think that's really accurate. I think Shin Godzilla has a lot to say about Japanese culture and Japanese politics, and a lot of the nuances of the culture is within this movie. I think that a lot of the times the Japanese people are trying so hard to give the most courteous and correct answer, but it takes so long to say it. So something like this is very, very poignant, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of, I don't know, there's a heavy bureaucratic nature here, but like, I don't know. I think definitely that's probably a Japanese thing, but you can see it to some degree in all governments and organizations where like, oh, let's set a meeting about having a meeting about talking about the thing. Um,
Yeah, it's it's just
by the
very
way,
interesting to see. Yeah,
from Chernobyl, the guy's name is Valery Legasov. I remembered it, Comrade
Legasov.
Legasov.
Yes, there we go.
And then the other one, the other guy, Stellan Skarsgård's character's name is Boris something. I can't remember his last name.
Yes, yes. It's all coming back to me now. Right, right, right. That's a great show, by the way.
Oh, there are like two good-looking guys in this scene, and then like a lot of like dubs here. I'm just gonna be honest. The main character guy, and then like 40-year-old guy with glasses who gave him advice in the hallway are like presentable, but everyone else here is like rough. Which I guess if you look at the American Senate, they're not a bunch of lookers either.
Well,
You
actually,
know,
it's very interesting you mentioned that because obviously the main character, he's a pretty well-known actor in Japan, and then the older gentleman who is his senior was a very famous Japanese actor and model when he was younger, like our age, roughly.
I see.
And then the actor who plays the prime minister, who's sitting in the very center there, he sadly passed away, I believe, like 2 or 3 years ago. But he's also a great actor who was very famous back when he was like a younger man, but still like he is kind of like a veteran. But it was kind of sad to see him go. This is very
This guy
interesting.
looks like an animator, bro. He doesn't look like a biologist at all, with the
Well, these
glasses and the beard.
three are based on three animators that Anno loves, and that gentleman that you just saw, I believe, is an homage to Miyazaki.
Yeah, it's what he looks like, Miyazaki.
Yeah, it's like there's so much waiting and downtime, like Jesus Christ, and then
Uh,
it
the,
cuts to this.
the CG is a little bit rough here, but I understand that's budget.
Yes, it's actually very interesting, Michael. The budget for Shin Godzilla is almost the same as the budget for Birdman.
Hmm. Well,
So
Michael Keaton, I guess, is more expensive.
yes, exactly. So
But yeah,
considering the low budget that they had, the CG for the most part is pretty good for a Japanese movie.
these sets are reminding me of like 3-star hotels, and it's really depressing me. I think that's intentional, but like, it's like this is like the business center when you go to the hotel. It's like, oh, we have a full business center, and it's like two really terrible chairs and like
Yes,
this
yes.
color of wood table.
Yeah, I remember they were taking a lot of reference photos and using those reference photos as a way to make these sets the most accurate as they possibly could so that you really get that experience of being in those real government buildings in Japan. So I thought that was a very neat touch, to be honest. And it is funny to see how realistic they are in a way. So that's always a treat.
Oh, I love this. We haven't decided which ministry should be responsible for handling this, so
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah, that's that's great. That is just Anno poking fun at the entire government system, and that's just great. And then they bring in this biologist woman, and they don't even listen to her opinions all that much, and they almost try to hear her opinions through the mouths of other people. So it's just really interesting to see how people get tossed around in this room here.
Is there a lot of apologizing for other people in Japan, or
Oh,
is that?
absolutely, absolutely.
Oh wow,
There's
that
always
shit's
apologizing
rude
for
as fuck.
anything.
Shit's rude as fuck.
Yeah, it's not great. And again, I do find it interesting again that Anno's doing this. That
When
um,
that guy blinked, he looked just like Filthy Frank.
oh my god, it is interesting again, Anno being Anno, that in Japan they are still a bit behind when it comes to female representation in their society, in their films, in their politics especially. And it is cool to see that Anno included one female who is in charge of the entire self-defense force and a female biologist for the researching aspect of Godzilla. And then later on in the film, a U.S. senator who is kind of like a liaison to U.S. and Japan, who is also a
Yes,
woman.
we'll talk about her when she shows up.
Yes, we'll get to her because there are some thoughts, I think, from two Americans. I think there are some
Yeah,
thoughts.
some of the English, but yeah, well, that's kind of what the deal he had with Evangelion too, to a degree, where um, two of the sort of key roles in the government organization are played by women,
Yes.
which for a 1990 something Japanese show, it's probably fairly progressive, I would think.
Yeah. And even now, I think it's still very progressive. Um, that was Ano, by the way, in the bus. He was the bus driver
All right,
for a very quick second.
so I
Yeah,
have some
here, right
thoughts
here.
here.
Yeah,
This is like some. It looks like a giant turkey man, you
it
know.
actually was made to look like a deep sea shark, a goblin shark, if I'm not mistaken, and that's really interesting. And that's why it's got that big gaping eye.
Yeah, but it's got that like gobbledy sack. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's meant to be gills.
But it's gobbledy red colored,
Well,
man.
yeah, it's
It's gobbledy colored.
just look right here coming up. Hold on one second. right here. Yeah,
Eh,
that's
all right,
gills.
I
Those are
see, I
gills.
see.
Yeah,
A little bit on the side.
and it's just like bleeding constantly. Jesus Christ! And this is just Ano.
This is pretty fucked.
It's so grotesque, and yet it's so kind of surprising looking. I was so shocked when I first read this in the script because I didn't know this was Godzilla in the script. And I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
that's
this is Godzilla."
a
Okay.
very odd misdirect there. Oh, and look, they all stand up. That's nice.
Well, I'm curious, Michael. What do you think? Because as a Godzilla fan, it was very jarring to me, but I appreciated the new take on it. But what was your impression when you first saw that Godzilla evolves in this movie?
I mean, I like that he stops looking like that because I don't like that at all. It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I guess it raises stakes to a degree.
Right, right,
Um, I can definitely see it like as a good way to structure a film to a degree.
right. That's actually very true. Um, Also, it does represent how natural catastrophes do get worse and worse as you leave them be and don't act fast enough.
Right, if you ignore them.
So, for example, if the Japanese government was able to handle Godzilla and kill him in this stage, perhaps later on in the film when Godzilla emerges back again in his final form, they could have avoided the entire disaster that they face later on.
Right,
But they
right. If
couldn't.
they acted earlier. I
Exactly,
mean,
exactly.
I do like that everyone in that room put on their jackets.
Yes, they're
It's like we have time for like special emergency jackets.
yes, yes. And that's Ano being like, "Come on, guys, like there are more important things to do. Like are you for real?" And this is why I can't understand that criticism that this film is quote unquote nationalistic or right wing or propaganda because it does show the ineptitude of the Japanese government. And wouldn't a product that's nationalistic not show that kind of stuff? I really don't think it would show those sides of the government.
No, probably not. I mean, what is the exact critique that it's right wing? What did they say is right wing about it?
Well, they're saying that because of the excess use of the military titles and political figures and portraying these self-defense force as quote unquote heroic, it's somehow promoting nationalistic views. But I do disagree with this thought, to be honest.
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I thought the military was not terribly effective against this thing. Like
Exactly, because it's because of the fact that at the end of the day, it's the scientists and the lawbreakers who actually defeat Godzilla with their plan.
spoilers. Yeah.
So it's not the
Which is
military.
usually how it goes. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's usually
not
how it
King
goes.
Kong where you just shoot it harder and then it dies, you know.
Right. I like these three heads in a row shots. Like these are always like super cool. And this right here is just like what
Oh yeah, this is
this is
it's
really just
so
interesting.
unnecessary, but
But
it's
it's
interesting.
so good. Like it's really insane because nobody makes movies like these. These are very specific, and Chester and Nadim use this word in our Evangelion podcast. But auteur, this is a auteur director doing Godzilla, and I really appreciate seeing that. And I've never seen this kind of visual language in a movie, let alone a monster movie, before. And you can really tell that it's Ano behind the camera here. It's very awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm kicking up some visual motifs here. It's tough because I'm trying to like watch it, but then also like comment.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough.
It's first time we've done this, everybody. Excuse
Yes.
any awkward pauses.
And you've seen this once also, so that's harder for you. Like
I've seen
I've
it
seen this
once,
movie
but
like a million times, so
yeah, you've seen it a bunch. I mean, it's been years since I've seen it.
right. It's been 5 years exactly. I like this technique of like everyone's looking directly into the camera, like it's very uncomfortable.
Not her though.
She'll turn. There we
Oh,
go.
what? There you go.
I'm actually very impressed with one specific aspect of the film as well. Michael, you and I are writers, so I think this might be something that we would tap into here. But I'm so impressed that Ano, as a screenwriter, was able to portray this monster disaster so realistically. I think it is a underrated element of the story, And obviously, the writing isn't breaking new ground when it comes to storytelling, but how it tells its story is so realistic and so true. It's really, really impressive to hear all of this dialogue. The accuracy is insane. It feels real, as opposed
Yeah,
to other monster movies that feels fictional. This feels like I'm watching a real catastrophe.
it's it's stylized, but then it's also in a lot of places deeply unstylized.
I think
Like,
the stylization is mostly in the visuals, but in terms of like the plain writing of it, it's
sure,
so
I mean,
jargon heavy.
so some of the visuals are meant to evoke like
Yes, absolutely.
not a film. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
And like I was mentioning before, Ano and staff were always looking at footage from the Fukushima disaster, the tsunamis, and all of the natural catastrophe news clips that they can find. And they were also watching news clips of 9/11 as well to fully capture what it means to showcase destruction and disaster and a real catastrophe that could happen here. And also, this movie is really fitting for a modern era because of the fact that a lot of the news clips are footage that were taken from the civilians that were on the ground. So seeing all of this found footage and documentary style shots are really really interesting because you can see that real life feeling bleeding into this movie almost as if this was real, and
yeah,
it really grounds the monster scenes with a huge sense of gravitas and realism, which is really really great.
yes, it does have that going on for it. I mean, like, people on the scene are always going to be there first to capture things before journalists, so
Yes,
there's a
exactly.
realism to it.
I really wish I was there for these military base stuff because like this is really really cool. I wish I was there for all these scenes. This is really fun.
Is this shot on an actual base? You know?
Yeah, these are all real bases. These are all actual self defense bases in Japan. That's a nice CG shot there.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, I was like, that was CG.
Yeah, but it's
It looked good, but like, I had a feeling it was an actual
yeah. You
helicopters.
can tell by the speed of how it's moving. This is an interesting shot. This exchange here, I think, is pretty important, and it does portray what Ano is trying to say, and I believe is often misinterpreted. This is Ano telling the Japanese public about their mistakes in the past, forgetting what made Godzilla who he is. Godzilla, at the end of the day, is a allegory for nuclear disaster and warfare, and also scientific achievement as well. So all of this is a very poignant message of what happened during that time, and it clearly is a interpretation of Japanese history through Ano's light, and reminding the Japanese public of what happened, and the atom bombs were dropped on Japan because Japan went to war. So this is a reminder of the lives lost because of the actions of the Japanese government.
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by his little
His
arms.
little arms, his little arms. He's gonna be a grown boy soon. He's really gonna be a grown boy.
Yeah, I mean, the original Godzilla, right? It is talking about a different nuclear uh,
Yes.
incident attack by the U.S., and then this is, I mean, the timing of it is interesting because they roughly coincides with another nuclear tragedy.
Yes, exactly. And actually, speaking of
Oh,
the original Godzilla,
he's getting little hands.
for any Godzilla fans, you'll instantly know that this is a classic cue from the first Godzilla film from Akira Ifukube. So, this is a great callback to that first original film that Ano's doing here. I just love the use of the score here.
Little motifs there.
Yes.
Damn, he's got like a meaty mouth.
The CG here is actually pretty good.
Yeah, you know, it looks really good. Occasionally there are some issues with the physics, but other than that, it looks pretty good.
I think that's the problem with most CG monsters. I think in general, is the motion of the CG characters. It's not the texture work, but the texture work here is really, really good. Like it's shocking how good it is.
Especially for the budget, yeah.
Yes, a bye bye
Oh, is
train.
that's a model there?
No, that's actually a real train stop, and then a CG train flying over the screen, making that effect. So,
I see. I see.
and that's like a real bridge
Oh
with the CG
no,
Godzilla. Oh no, the
the
bridge.
hubris of their infrastructure. That's what you get for
Michael,
showing off, guys.
this is karma for showing off the infrastructure in the
Yeah,
beginning.
you
Right,
show
right.
off all that infrastructure, you got to get it blown up. You know.
And talking about the infrastructure and things blowing up, I do remember this story. I was at the office, and um, the staff members were calling several building companies to ask permission to have their buildings featured in the film and also potentially be destroyed in the film, because there was a lot of legal things that they had to go through. And
Oh, like a model of their building destroyed.
oh, yes, exactly. A digital model, because it was going to be CG later on. And, sometimes you have to clear certain buildings and you have to make sure that certain buildings are compensated and whatnot. So there was a lot of legal stuff that was going on. But I was overhearing the conversation, and some of the people who were the owners of the building companies were like, "Oh, our building destroyed in the Godzilla film? Oh, please, by all means. That sounds
Oh, well, that's
great."
nice. It has enough clout,
I think it's a big honor to have your building be destroyed in a Godzilla film. I think it'll attract a lot of viewers
I'm
and
sure
such, so it's a big thing.
you play it at the corporate holiday party or
Exactly.
whatever.
Here you go. Here's the thing that happened. And I think it's really cool that people in Japan who are actors treat Godzilla like how British actors and filmmakers treat 007. It's a long-lasting franchise that almost represents the country, and it's a huge honor to be a part of that long-lasting franchise. So that's always been a very interesting tidbit. There's a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of repetition here.
yeah.
So I guess that's fair. This protocol.
What I like about the repetition is that it's showing every facet of the government trying to do this thing, and they're pausing on two civilians, and I feel
Uh-oh.
like that's very Japanese.
He's getting a glow up.
Yep. Another roar. There it is. And then he's gonna go back home. Bye. He's gonna go back into the ocean. He's just crawling over.
Was just coming right at camera, like down with the
It's
neck.
great. I love it.
It's very uncomfortable.
Hey everyone, if you guys want to listen to the rest of the podcast, you can head over to Apple Podcast at the link in the description below and hear the rest of our ramblings. And Michael, do you have any thoughts on our little plug there?
Great plug. Excellent plug. Even better episode of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Check it out and keep an eye out for more stuff hitting this channel.
And subscribe. Thank you guys.